Okay, so we're ready to start back, and this is Thursday night item where I had you in last time, where I had you play around a little bit. So what I want you to do now is have open your index, your style, your MD file, and then do this where we had the outline class, have that only on the body. So if you had it anywhere else, go ahead and remove it. Okay, and then on the header, we had made an extra border just to play around. So just comment that out. And let me show you, depending on your keyboard, like for me and probably for you, it's Window. If you're on Windows, on Mac, it's the command and the question mark, and then what that will do is it'll comment, it'll we call toggle the comment, right? So comment that out at this point. So it should, you could have different colors, that's totally fine, and you could have different wording here, that's actually totally fine. But at this point, once you have it at least where you have the, resembling the output here, which is header with a background color, a color for the font padding margin for the main, right, which is what, by the way, creates this space here, right, and then a background color on that, and then an outline class. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Once you have that, go ahead and do a commit, and your first commit, and you don't have to do one, you just say ready to go. Okay, so go ahead and get that ready to go, so to speak. Go ahead and have it. And now let's actually do a little more work to this file. So I'm going to come down here after this section. I'm going to add another section. Okay, I'm going to hit enter here. We're going to come back in a little bit, depending on how far we get on this, and we're going to add a form into here. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do an H2. Okay, and we'll say contact us, because forms are very important, and I think we'll probably get there. We'll see if we do or not. But one really key thing we forgot to do, or not forgot, just didn't get to, because we were talking about a little bit about this heading and the main, and these really provide ways you can style. Of course, we've seen this already through having these rule sets attached to these selectors, but also a structure for the page. Now, you don't have to have this particular tool open, but I want to show you. I have it, it's called HTML5 Outliner. You'll learn this when you get to CIT85. But this is just good to know, because what happens here is as we're setting up our site, there's an outline, and where this becomes important is both for accessibility and also for other, when things are reading your websites, and those are machines, like we call, there's different names we could give for these robots, crawlers that actually review your content, and that outline helps them index your site. And so providing these structures are important. So let's go down after section and let's add a new one called footer, okay? And hit enter, right? So now, right, we have at least at this point all of the structure, but let's actually put in here copyright, right? And then put your name. Now at this point, we can use a symbol here that we all kind of commonly know as copyright. And if you hit the ampersand copy space, notice what happens over here, right? Oh, I made a mistake. That's okay, we can fix it. Now, by the way, let me finish that. So see how this is copyright. If you go to MDN and you just type in entity, or you look for entities, you will find that there's a bunch of them. So if we use this code, it creates this symbol in our page, which is great. It provides, and there's a growing number of these I really like, and it seems like in most web development we just start to touch these, and I really like that we cover that in 85. But coming back here, one of the things I noticed right away was like this wasn't in the right place. Now, I noticed that because it was inside of main. As a matter of fact, if I was to come back over, and again, I'm going to show you this, is you just search HTML5 outliner, if you wanted to do this for your own site. There's several out there, right? Oh, that's an extension. I think the second one, yeah. So where you could actually copy and paste in here and it would give you that. I have an extension loaded. You don't have to, but just know that these are good things to understand. Now I'm going to go ahead and come in here. And right now, nothing's showing up in footer. And part of that's because I don't have an H1, but part of that is also this, and let's see if this fixes it. I'm going to grab, so you can select this content and you can just drag it because it should be underneath main, because main is really your main content, and so your footer would be the last thing generally before the end of your body. So I would drag this and then I could do it maybe right before here. That's cool. I can do that. That's good. And then I could get rid of that space there. I could dig in, select A, choose prettier, select with, document prettier. Okay. I did that a couple fairly fast, but hopefully by now, right? Select A. I use Command A, Windows A for Windows user. Right click. I do have a prettier here if you've noticed it as well. This creates some output here, so if you've ever seen that as well. I've just noticed for whatever reason, it's probably just my setup. This one doesn't work as consistently. So if you ever do have to see this and try it and come into this part of your terminal, just go back to terminal to then do your get workflow. Okay, so now we have, good. So now we have footer. Right, we have footer at the end of this, and now notice how this also changes to show footer at the end, which is great. Okay, so now we can also here, right? So let's also go to footer, right? And let's, in this case, in our CSS, and let's talk about some CSS we could write on the footer itself, because it's really good to, think about how we might style this, because a footer may or may not have any kind of styles on it, but let's actually do some, right? So let's do background color. Now, could we give this one a background color? For sure, right? Again, play around. This is where, by the way, it's worth stopping here, that there is something called a color scheme you can use. Okay, let me go ahead. Is it cooler? Yeah, cooler. There it is, a cooler.co, which is really fun. You can actually, is that the right one? It's the wrong one. Cooler. There it is, .co. I think that's the right one. Yeah, COOLORS.co. Manage dim. By the way, these are so annoying, but also reject all. Let's see if it lets me in anyway. Sometimes if you reject, it let me in anyway. Okay, good. So in this case, you can come in and you can look at color schemes. We'll look at this more in 85, but what's great about what we're going to do in this class is when you pick a template, you're going to end up picking a color scheme, but just know that I'm kind of pretty much randomly, selecting colors here that I think might look okay, but there are definitely ways like here where you could go in, explore some of the trending options, look at, it's like find one you might like, right? And then you can just go into it. Now, actually, in this case, you can also just type the color itself. So I could come over there, and this is fun to play with, right? So I could do this. Right, now I do need to, in this case, right, put, I believe, that. Okay, so now let's go look at what that did to my site. Oof, so dark, right? So in that case, I might go a little lighter, right? So I think you get the idea, though. There are ways that you can use color palettes. We're not doing it here. Was I on the right one? Oh yeah, I was on footer. Okay, so we could give it, again, let's go, just giving it a background color, giving it an actual color for the font, why it would make sense, right? And then again, let's do a little padding, right? So padding 10 pixel and then 0, okay? So it gives it a nice little padding as well. Okay, so at this point, we've seen classes, We've seen color palettes. We've made out the rest of the page with a footer. We've learned a little bit about entities and how to include them, right? So what we want to do here is start working on our form. So but before we do that, let's go ahead and have you do one more commit. So this commit, this second commit, and I should have been doing this before, so I apologize, right? Is starting. Let's just do this. Well, and actually, okay, so commits actually should describe the work that you've done. So we should say finished HTML structure. Okay. Good. Okay, so that's good to go. And actually, ready to go. Really probably shouldn't have had. I think it would be okay with the explanation part. And you don't really have to capitalize these things. So there we go. Okay, so over here. All right, so now we're ready to go. So that should be another commit that you're good to go there. So let's just start playing with, for a few minutes, our form itself, because forms are so important. So coming over here, notice we have our heading here, right? And I just, okay, down here. So now let's actually type in form tab, okay? So the form is, of course, the thing that almost everyone has interacted with, because it's the thing how we enter information into the web, but it's really just an outside structure. And what we have to do is we have specific tags that can go or not go inside of a form element, right? So one of the things we do is we use a label, okay? And let's say name, and you'll see how this shows up here, right? So this is a label for what's going to come next, which is an input. So I'm going to say input here. Okay. Now when we're creating, notice what happens. Cool, right? So this is maybe the first time you've seen something called an input, but it's definitely not the first time you've seen it on a web page. For sure, because think about everything you do when you enter something. You enter a username, you enter a Google search, you enter ChatGPT. You're entering into, from now on, you will know this as a form. And the form has an input. And that input has a label, okay? And so it's really good now that you're starting to identify the things you're used to that now actually have what is used to create those things. Okay, so let's do another label. Okay. Now again, these fours right here are going to be used in different ways when we do coding. For our purposes, we could give it, things like name, but I don't want to actually throw too much in here because I like, for now, keeping things fairly simple. There's also ways when we're coding JavaScript, you will learn about how to include things here like ID, okay, like name again, that we would then use in our code. But for this purposes, we're going to keep it fairly simple. Okay, so the next one, very common, we'll do is email : okay, now this is a label. Okay, so in this case, we'll do input. Now in here, we gave it by default. It defaults to a text, so that it thinks you're going to enter a text. But on email and other types of inputs, when depending on what you use for type here, it can make a big difference. Like you can actually use email as the type. Okay, very cool that you can do this, and we don't see it so much here. Okay, but also we can see it when we're on the mobile devices, because when you're on mobile devices and you format things correctly with type, then it actually brings up the keyboard that gives some of that email context, so it's easier for people to type an email. Okay, all right, so let's do another one, label. Okay, again, I'm going to get rid of the 4 for now because we don't need it, but the label here will be message. Okay, label, and then the input type will be, now this will be a text, okay? But in this case, we're going to change this. I actually did this a little quick because what we want here is something a little longer. We could keep message here, but typically, and I suspect you've seen it, but again, we're giving word to it. It's called text area, okay? And actually, I should just do it this way. I should just do text area. And the reason is that it fills in for me some defaults. Right, look at this. It gives me a row. Actually, here, this is what happened here. what I'm looking at here, right, is that, hold on a second. Okay, evidently I just needed to refresh the page because my live server wasn't loading correctly. You may run into that as well. So let me move this over because this is probably just not, and this is a little longer line. Okay, so text area. Again, we don't need name right now, but we are going to keep columns and rows in here, and this determines how big the box is. Okay. And notice how now that we've added this, it kind of throws off, right, everything else because it's so big. And this is where we'll start styling in the next video and learn how to style some of these things. But for now, we could just put a BR here, and that BR would then throw that into the next line. Let's refresh. For some reason on mine, it wasn't getting it. Oh, right, it wouldn't. Yeah, actually it wouldn't, because look at what it's going to do. Actually, what I'd want to do here is actually do this BR, in this case before. Okay, and by doing that, we're throwing it into the next line. But look what happened, right? Look what happened here is it because of the way we formatted everything to be centered. Now, if you remember right, we did that up in here. I'm showing this in the CSS file. So what we'll do is we'll come back on the next video and we'll actually style this better. And for now, I'll just go ahead and take it back out because there's better ways. I'll show you how to style it. Okay, now last commit here will be, again, this is just your third commit. You don't have to put 3, is starting form. All right, so that'll be your 3 commits for this one, and then we'll move on to the next one.